about this graceful
of us. But I mean, like,
in a dark situation, other people.
carry of firearms and cannons.
So 5 to 6 minutes, that's all it takes, I hear.
that's all it takes for police to get there. And, you know, you got to be your own first responder.
Mm-hmm. And so this is almost at minimum, right? Sometimes it could take longer.
It can take longer. That is right. So it's up to you to make sure that you're prepared, that you have the resources, you have the knowledge, that you practice with your firearm and everything, because you may have to take care of yourself and your family all by yourself before police or paramedics get there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in a life-threatening situation, a lot can happen in 5 to 6 minutes. I mean, a lot can happen in 1 minute. Like, what happens?
Right, you can bleed out in 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. You know, you get stabbed and it hits the artery, boom, you're gone. It doesn't take long at all, and, you know, that's it. Your life's over. So you definitely, we teach people at Central Texas Gun Works. We try to give you the tools to protect yourself and also protect your family. Like, for example, the things that happened with my family. You know, my mother, my stepdad were home one night, and 3 o'clock.
So give us the situation. 3 o'clock, 3 a.m. Where are they? Atlanta.
Right. So it's they're outside Atlanta, Georgia. Mm-hmm. It was 3 a.m. in the morning, and these guys earlier that day actually saw some electronics that my parents put out by the trash, because my parents bought these electronics, installed them in the family room, and put the empty boxes out by the street for the trash to collect. And so these guys saw that, you know, those boxes inside, they were going to come back later on that night at 3 a.m. to break into the home while they were sleeping.
So why is that important? Is it because, oh, hey, there's probably some expensive equipment in there and they just want to...
They're old, they're retired, it's 3 a.m., they're sleeping. You know, we can, you know, if they wake up, we can take advantage of them, possibly kill them.
Sure.
All for electronics. So they started creeping around my parents' home and then remove all the screens from the first floor windows to try to get inside. They didn't want to break the glass, so they couldn't get inside because the windows were actually nailed shut. They then went over to my parents' back patio, broke into the back patio, tried to get to the back door, couldn't get inside there. And then went over to my parents' shed, broke into the shed, took everything out of the shed, including a ladder that was inside the shed. They laid that ladder against the house, climbed to the second floor, because on the second floor, the master bathroom window was open. So they started crawling through my parents' second floor master bathroom window. Now it's about 4 a.m. in the morning.
Wow. Okay, so 2 hours, they're already taking stuff.
Boom. So right around that time, my dad gets up because he was watching TV, but he had fallen asleep, and so left the TV on. So when he woke up, the TV had a blue screen. So he gets up, he walks down the hallway, resets the cable box, he walks back, he hears a noise on the second floor. And he looks at my mother, she's sleeping. He looks at the cat's sleeping. It's not the cat knocking something off making noise. So he's wondering who's making that noise on the second floor of, in the master bathroom. So he grabbed this .40 caliber pistol. He walked over to the bathroom and saw a little light coming through the bathroom door. He then looked around the corner. He saw this guy crawling through the second floor master bathroom window. He fired one single shot him in the face, killed him, dropped him right there.
Wow.
The guy fell back outside that window, landed on his back, and died right there on the roof.
Wow. So there wasn't even time to grab your phone, right, to call the police or anyone.
No. So, and luckily, the police, somehow, they had another call not too far away, so they were close by. And so when my mother got up, she dialed 911. She then went into the bathroom there. She saw the guy outside the window, laying on his back dead. Mm-hmm. She looked on the floor. She saw a cell phone laying on the floor. Mm-hmm. And, when she talked to 911, she told them her name, her address. Someone tried to break in the home and had to stop them. Mm-hmm. So then as soon as she said that, the police actually did pull up outside pretty quick. Mm-hmm. And so my mother disconnected that phone call, and she then picked the phone back up. She called me. Mm-hmm. When she called me, I jumped up, went into straight instructor mode. Mm-hmm. I was like, listen, one, did you call 911 first before you called me? Two, make sure that, before we go downstairs and open the door for the police, we put the gun on the table next to the door and then open the door for the police. Don't open the door with a gun in your hand. And I want to make sure that that gun is laid down on the table. So, and I said, the last thing is you have a right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. I said, in no circumstances do I want you to talk to the police. I said, I'm going to hang up this phone. I'm going to call our attorney, and we're going to let the attorney talk to the police.
So this type of advice, right, and instructions is definitely something that you incorporate in your courses. So this is Michael Cargill. He is the owner of
Central Texas Gunworks.
That's right. And also a huge advocate for the Second Amendment, obviously. And so we're going to talk all things gun ownership, as well as our protective rights, and also maybe talk about the educational pieces that might change the narrative around firearms, right? Because I think a lot of it, the opposing sides, a lot of it has to do with that side hasn't even held a pistol or understood the education behind a firearm.
And there's history that surrounds gun laws. Why do we have gun laws initially? Our laws go all the way back to the 1700s, maybe back to 1600s, where the very first gun control law in this country was you couldn't give firearms to Indians. That was the first gun control law.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And then the second gun control law was freed slaves could not have access to firearms. So gun control laws are racist, and they always target a certain group of people.
Okay. Then maybe we can unpack that a little bit. However, just going back to the story real quickly, because it's very interesting, right? So was your dad trained with firearms?
Yes. So I brought my parents to Texas, and taken them to the gun range. And that's a funny story because my mother, we were at the gun range one day. We're shooting. I brought her into class, had to take the light carry handgun course, took her out to the range, had her shoot at the range. And she had did something wrong, pointed the gun the wrong direction, and I kicked her off the range. And I tell people, look, I'm very strict. I will kick my mother off the range. so everyone's going to follow my instructions, And so, but I'm there to help people. We're there to help and guide you, because I want you to learn, because I want you to be able to defend yourself. And so if I hadn't, if I'm not that strict with people when we're on the line, we're shooting, then, we would have a lot of victims, on the good guy side. And I don't want the good guys dying. I want the good guys being able to defend themselves.
So there's steps that you can follow in order to defend yourself, because not only does defense happen from, okay, hey, I was able to protect myself, they weren't able to engage because I engaged first, then you have to continue to protect yourself against the law, right? Right.
So in a lot of states, there are three places you should feel safe. You should feel safe inside your home, inside your vehicle, and your place of business. And so if someone tries to enter that place or those places, or remove you from those places, or try to kill you in those places, you should be able to defend yourself in those places. So you shouldn't have to wait. You shouldn't have to warn someone. If they unlawfully enter your home, you stop them. There's no, I'm going to pump a shotgun, just to scare you, to make you run away. If you pump that shotgun to, scare someone, you may notify someone else that you don't see where your position is inside the house, and they may shoot you and kill you. So it's important that, one, if you pull that gun out, use it. Don't use it to scare someone. Use it to stop them.
And you kind of go through all those nuances too in class as well. And it's a course that takes, I think, was it over 2 days or was it a full day?
It's just one day. And the light carry handgun course, it goes from 8 a.m. We do it from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. So, we go over a lot of different scenarios, show you some videos. We talk about those videos in class, try to break that down, And I like to go around the room and ask people, show them a video and say, hey, what would you do in this particular situation? And there's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. I just want you to tell me, what would you, what are you thinking and what would you really do? And then I'll tell you, this is what was really happening. And this is, where you went wrong, so that you understand, because a lot of times we're not looking at it from someone else's perspective. We're only looking at it with tunnel vision, only what we see. So we need to look at the big picture and look at from, multiple angles, and figure out how to, solve those problems.
Yeah, there's a lot of engagement in that, in those classes, and it really gets you to think. So, which I appreciate a lot. And it's also just scratching the surface, because you offer a lot of resources as well too to continue on that journey of learning more and educating.
That's just
yourself.
the beginning. The light carry handgun course is just to, kind of, really get you out there. You need to learn how you're going to draw the gun from the holster. So you need to take someone else's course or go somewhere else and say, hey, I need to draw this gun from the holster. I need to work on my trigger squeeze. I need to work on, the trigger reset, things like that. There's so many other things that, that I can share with you. How do I move? How do I move to cover? To make sure that, when I'm being shot at, I don't get shot.
Yeah, and there's a stark difference too with somebody who just has a, open carry handgun as opposed to somebody who has a license to carry.
Correct.
And just the education behind that, because there's also, if given a situation, there's a couple of different questions. My question to you is it an if or is it a when you are in a situation like this, right? So there's that question. And also there's a reaction that would happen for people who haven't been trained. And I'm not saying train where it's like Monday through Friday, you got to get in there, every day. It's like
Right.
People can start to learn about these things just by doing a few reps a week and just even educating yourself and just learning the laws, taking, the license to carry courses and things like this. And so there's a reaction, and then there's also, hey, I'm going to, not reaction, but I'm going to act intentionally and also mindfully and with education behind me.
Right.
So,
and so in Texas, we have the constitutional carry. So you don't need a license in order to carry a firearm. But it's good to take that course and take the class, whether you get the license or not. So that way, we put you through those different scenarios. We've answered some of your questions, answered those hard questions about what you can't do. So you're right. It's not a matter of if, it's when something's going to happen. Something's definitely going to happen to you. How are you going to handle that situation? And I want to make sure that I've spent that time with you and kind of build that knowledge up, so that way you'll be able to respond to those things. Road rage. There's so much road rage, in all the major cities, in this country. We need to be able to handle that road rage. Don't engage in that person. I see things all the time. People are upset because someone cut them off, and so they want to get that person back. You just got to let that stuff go. Life is short and life is precious. And once life is gone, it's gone. You can't bring that back. Right. So, don't take things, so serious. A lot of times people are, trying to do things in their vehicle, maybe fix their makeup, maybe look at their cell phone they're not supposed to. Things that we're not supposed to do, we're always doing it in our vehicle. So don't take it personal when someone accidentally cuts you off or veers off too close in your lane or does something that's an accident, because that's what it is. It's an accident. And so you take it so personal, and then we want to engage and get them back. I want to get them back and make them pay for what they just did to me. That's crazy. That's silly. Because if you take someone's life, that's permanent. You cannot bring that back. So
speaking of just the weight of that, tell us about the $20,000 bullet.
Oh, man. Once that bullet goes out of the gun, you're talking, 20 grand. We're talking about, let me back up a little bit. So, before we get to the $20,000 bullet, I want to talk about, putting yourself in different situations. So let's say we go to the Texas State Capitol. I go to the Capitol, and let's say I want to open carry my rifle or shotgun. We all know that in Texas, you can open carry a rifle or shotgun. All right, so I can do that. But you know what? I want to go to the Capitol. I want to open carry my rifle on the Capitol grounds. I want to be able to do that. Well, you can do that. It's legal under Texas law. But unfortunately, the Texas DPS, they don't want you to do that. So they will say, hey, you need to leave. If you sit there and you argue, debate, you refuse to leave, they're going to arrest you for criminal trespass. Well, you're going to go to jail. You're going to be fingerprinted, going to be booked, going to spend that in jail. You're going to pay, anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 to defend yourself in court because you wanted to display your rifle or your shotgun in the open and go to the Capitol grounds. Well, guess what? 2 years, 3 years later, you're going to get that case dropped or dismissed because you're going to be right. But guess what? You went to jail, you got arrested, you were fingerprinted, you were booked, you had to pay, anywhere from 10 to 20 grand to get that case to that point where it's dropped or dismissed, and you were correct. But guess what? It cost you. It cost you, up to $20,000 to get that case dropped. But you were absolutely right. So, and then you say, you know what? I'm going to try to recoup my costs and sue the police. You're going to file a lawsuit and you're going to lose because guess what? They're law enforcement and they have that leeway to arrest you in a situation like that. They think they should arrest you in, and you're going to lose that lawsuit. And in the end, you're going to pay even more money, So guess what? You were right initially and it costed you. But guess what? Hey, you won.
Yeah. So you also offer suggested, I guess maybe it's on-call lawyers too, called Bear to Protect at Central Texas. So it's a great resource, I think.
I literally beg people to get some type of legal plan. We've had cases in a lot of the major cities where someone, will participate in a protest, and someone, ends up in the middle of that protest, with the protesters on the opposite side, end up in a situation where they have to use their firearm in that situation. With constitutional carry, with a license, you can carry a gun in the state of Texas. Yes, we have a Second Amendment and you have a right to, your firearms. But guess what? When you pull that gun out and you use it, that's going to trigger a reaction of law enforcement. And you're going to have to deal with that. If you don't have some type of legal plan, something, an attorney or something, then guess what? It's going to cost you a lot of money. And that's the one thing that people forget about. Once that gun comes out, the bullet goes out of the barrel of that gun, who's going to defend you or protect you? And I literally beg people to get some type of legal plan. And they're like, hey, they're invincible. Nothing's going to happen. If it does happen, the police are going to see it my way and everything's going to be okay. My parents were at home, at 3 o'clock in the morning. Someone broke into my parents' house. It took my parents an entire year to get that case dropped, dismissed, an entire year. And they were not arrested. They were not fingerprinted, but it took a year for the DA's office to say, okay, you were justified in what you did. It took my parents about 14 months after that for them to get their gun back. You're going to lose the firearm that you use. And if you use that, that really good gun, that really expensive firearm, you're going to lose that gun for however long until that case is over. And so it's
you want to make sure that you use
use the high point. Use the cheap gun.
Yeah, exactly.
So let the police take that one.
Sure.
But you definitely want to get some type of legal plan to defend yourself, to defend you once you've protected yourself.
Does anything happen to your right to carry then in those situations too? So let's say you did have an arsenal of guns.
If you were charged with a crime, then yeah, you're going to lose. You can use your license. You can get your license suspended.
But during that year of...
You can't purchase a gun.
Okay.
So if you're charged with a crime, then you're not going to be able to walk into the gun store and pass a background check because you have charges pending.
I see. Okay. Yeah. So it was pending for that year.
Yeah. It could be, but it wasn't for my parents, but
okay.
it could have been.
Got it.
Unfortunately, my parents did not, because they did everything right.
They had the right steps.
Didn't talk to the police, which is something hard for people to do.
Sure.
People think,
Well, in a situation like that, you have a dead guy on your roof.
And you want to say something.
Rattle some nerves there.
And you want to say a lot.
Yeah.
But you got to shut up.
Sure.
What are you doing? Yeah. Nothing in particular. Where are you going? Nowhere in particular. Where are you coming from? Nowhere in particular. You want to, don't answer those questions. Don't talk to police and let the attorney do the talking for you. That is so important.
Yeah, in a lot of situations where you are, growing up as a martial artist, I did learn a lot about situational awareness in a different setting, right? Not necessarily with firearms. And so there are a lot of pre-planned attacks that happen. So especially when it comes to your property, your homes, or, even in vehicles or things like this. So do you want to talk about maybe a little bit about the intent and why that is important when facing kind of legal action?
Yeah. Well, for one, you never know the direction that the police officers are going when they're doing an investigation. So you get stopped by police on the side of the road. They start asking you questions. It's best not to answer those questions because you don't know what happened in the direction you just came from, and they could tie you thinking that maybe you were involved in whatever happened behind you, and you probably had nothing to do with it. You just happened to pass by around the same time. That has happened. It's happened a lot. So it's best, not to talk, exercise that right and contact your attorney and let your attorney do the talking for you. I cannot stress how important that is.
So bear to protect. I have it. You have it.
Yeah.
Or you are just aware of that
Any
process.
type of legal plan, whether it's U.S. Law Shield or whatever, get something so that way you can, protect yourself legally.
Yeah. So the fights for, gun rights in general just isn't easy. It fights a lot of opposition. Do you maybe want to talk a little bit about what some of the challenges are legally and culturally speaking in the world of, Second Amendments and protection?
The thing that blows me away is a lot of people don't know the gun laws and they carry firearms. That's what blows me away. They won't come to the course. And I always tell people, I make this joke where I say, hey, I'll get you either on the front end where you get the gun and you come to class, or I'll get you on the back end where you mess up, get charged with a crime, and then it becomes court ordered. Eventually, I'm going to get you in class. So, and I've been doing this for over 20 years. Matter of fact, I've been an instructor, a LTC instructor for over 23 years. And so I've been doing this for quite a while where I've seen so many people in different walks of life be in different situations. I've seen a president of a banker, traveling on an airline, forget and leave their gun in their briefcase and get caught at the airport. I know a gun store, a range owner, who had their gun on them and forgot where it was and got caught at the airport. You'd be surprised. Well, people make that mistake, and because either they don't know, didn't think about what they're doing. Maybe they took some allergy medicine or whatever. Sure. So we've got to get to the point where we take firearms very serious and think about it. I carry my gun. When I get to the airport, I stop before I go through that checkpoint. And I say, okay, am I forgetting something? Did I leave something somewhere? Is it in a little pocket somewhere in a bag? That backpack. Am I taking that same backpack or that bag that I took to the gun range to the airport, using it to fly with? So things like that you have to think about.
Yeah. And as somebody who is newer to the scene of, gun, and firearm holder, I've started to do little habits even where it's not necessarily takes an event for me to just think about my gun. I think about it every morning where I wake up and I pretty much clean it and check it and know the status of it every morning. And so knowing the status when I wake up every single morning is really peace of mind, especially when you start getting into the habit of it, and then where you store it and where it's located, because every day may not be the same. Though, sure, maybe I'm alone and in my house and I don't have anything to worry about. But those habits can translate to, okay, let's say I go to my family's house for the holidays and I have it on me. Like, what's the status of my gun? There's nephews and nieces around who are young, right? So gun ownership is, it can be great because it could also help protect society. I mean, we've seen, just normal civilians also help detain people from these incidences, and they're heroic events and they're great, but there have been trained gun owners as opposed to just people carrying.
And when I think of home, there's so much that pops in my head when you say that, the house and home and being at home. First thing is, man, I get to the house, I want to make sure my doors of my vehicle are locked. I take everything, all my valuables out of the vehicle, take my gun out of my vehicle, bring it inside the home. I take my keys with my key fob, put it in a metal container so that way the signal from the key fob doesn't get to the vehicle. When that person comes to the driveway and they're checking the vehicle, my signal from my key fob doesn't hit that vehicle and it unlocks the vehicle. I want to make sure that I lock my front door, I lock all my windows, I turn my alarm on. My dog, I have dogs because they're my first, alert there. Let me know if someone's outside the home. I listen to my dogs. I know the difference between a squirrel outside or a person that's outside coming up the driveway by the way they're responding. So I know I have a flashlight, I have a knife, I have several guns, ammunition, I have a safe room, a little area I can go to where I have my monitor where I can see my cameras if, my cell phone dies or something, and I can have access to my cameras where I can see where the bad person is or whoever's outside the home. There's so much that pops into my head. Right. I use a code word outside the house in case there's an emergency where, something happens. I need to relate to someone inside the home. Hey, there's an emergency here. We use that word in a sentence. If we're in front of that person that's a threat, and we can say that word, or something like that, so we can kick a plan into place. There's so much that pops in the head when you say home.
Yeah, I know, right? And it's actually very exciting too, because I love it's sort of, learning more and more. It's just the gateway to just, overall protection and situational awareness.
Yes.
And, I've also taken courses at other programs like Sheepdog Response and whatever that we do, also like situational awareness, and we're doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because it's really good to also be physically protect yourself in case you don't have a firearm. Such as when I went to Greece, actually, I couldn't really take that, and I was in a situation where I've spoken about this in the past too, where I was actually assaulted. But I think that even just all of these pieces and little bits of knowledge from firearm awareness and gun safety and just being a responsible gun owner to it just translates a lot into your life. And so that's just really exciting, because I'm oh no, I guess I need a code word for my safety to teach me your ways.
You need a code word so that way you can alert someone, whether it's a text message, something, you're going somewhere to meet someone, you can send let them know where you are. Hey, and by the way, I'm going this location, this time, by the way, and if something happens, that way you can send them a message and they can, get you some help or assistance. Always, let someone, where they can track you. I like my vehicles. I know where all of my vehicles are at all times. I can tell you where my vehicle is. I have cameras in all of my vehicles. I have Wi-Fi in my vehicle. If someone steals one of my cars, we're going to be able to track that vehicle down. Yeah. Or the police can track it down. Yeah,
and sometimes we get into these little conversations too in the Central Texas Gunworks courses too, where it's these little scenarios, and then sometimes you hear from people too where they're yeah, it's I have an extra fake wallet, which is also a great way to. There's a lot of also de-escalation scenarios that we speak of too, because it's almost like everything that happens before the weapon gets pulled is discussed and talked through, which is more this is how you really defend yourself right before it gets to that point. Right. And then to also be educated in the actual use of firearms. Yeah, because the thing is, you really don't want to pull a gun out and use it. You want that to be your very last option, because that's permanent when you do pull a gun out and use it. So you want to try to avoid those situations, try to, like I said, de-escalate those situations, try not to get to that point. Yeah, and in today's world, and I don't know if it's just the fact that the media outlets, there's more media outlets, but the crime situation, I'm not sure the stats on that, but it seems like it has grown and it has escalated. And so you can really never be too prepared. So it's really not just about making you scared or fearful, and then you live your life every day just trying to, figure out the status of your gun and protection and all of these things. It's just not okay or cool to be oblivious about it, right? And so just to be responsible, to check in. And so with that being said, let's take it back. So I think you said 20 years ago you started... Over 20 years ago. So just being more involved as an advocate for firearms, correct? Mm-hmm. So was this around the time, or so more than 20 years ago? Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the situation with your grandmother that really led you into, which I actually just heard about, and it's wow, this is fascinating. So when you first held a firearm or shot one, it was in the military, correct? It was in the military in basic training when I was first introduced to firearms. Okay. And then when you actually became a real advocate of it, was that your grandmother's story, the moment? Yeah, it was the situation that happened with my grandmother. My grandmother was the person that actually kind of raised me. I went everywhere with my grandmother. My grandmother's actually blind in one eye, partially blind in the other, and she was deaf. She had 2 hearing aids. So I was kind of like her, seeing eye dog.
she would, take me everywhere with her.
not a
I
bad
would tell her, hey, grandma, here comes the sidewalk, step up, step down,
Sure.
grandmother, and stuff like that. So she was the one that I was with a lot. We went to church a lot. So I spent a lot of time with her, went to her doctor's appointments, all kinds of stuff. And so this one day, she decided that she was going to go back to college to become a nurse. She wanted to get her college degree. So she goes back to college, at 70 years old
Wow.
to become a nurse.
Sure.
She goes to college, and then she's sitting at in a library one day. She'd gone to a library. She was sitting at a bus stop, waiting for a bus to come, and a guy came along, mugged her, and raped her. And so that almost destroyed me, because my grandmother's like the sweetest person on this earth. Never done anything to anyone. She gets off the bus, she always tells everybody, she always said, God bless you, have a good day, said that to everyone, people she didn't know and stuff like that. She was like the sweetest person. If it's someone to do that to her, that really almost broke me down. And I said, how do I, respond to that? What do I do? I want to do something. And instead of just getting angry, and turning that into the wrong direction, I decided to turn it into, being proactive, and turn it into like self-defense. I said, we need to spend time with the ladies in the family and teach you how to defend yourself. Whether it's, learning how to fight, whether it's with a firearm, a weapon, teach you, really, to be, like we said before, your own first responder. So that's why I started, getting to firearm instruction and teaching people in my family, one, we need to go buy guns. Two, we need to learn how to use them. Three, we need to learn what the gun laws are, so that way, make sure we don't get ourselves in trouble, and then know how to respond when you're stopped by police. So we're not afraid of law enforcement. So I wanted my entire family to learn these things. And so I would bring them to the house on a Saturday, and we would go over, taking guns apart, cleaning guns. We'd go over how to hold, how to stand. Another Saturday we'll go to the range, go shoot. Another Saturday we'll talk about the laws. Another Saturday, we would do, self-defense, a lot of different things with the family.
So kind of like a book club, but a gun club.
Exactly.
We like that. I need to start one here in Austin.
That's right. Club.
I guess we have one. We kind of do this.
Yeah, that's a gun club. I like that.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do that, and and that's kind of what set me down that road, and that's where I just tunneled that energy, and turned it around to, what, this is how we're gonna do it. And I started in a living room of my house. People would come over at 8 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, and my neighbors were like, "What's going on?" I see people at, Saturday morning walk into your house with guns. What's happening? What are you guys doing? And I told them, and it's like, oh, well, can we join? And that's how I kind of started.
Right.
In the living room of the house, once a month on a Saturday, people would come over, in the neighborhood. And then they would tell someone. And then, we'd have another class. Then they would tell someone. He had another class. And then I said, okay, it's too full in my living room. We need to go to a hotel conference room. So we went to hotel conference rooms. And then it got to the point where the hotel conference room actually double booked us. So I was like, okay, we need to find our own place.
Sure.
And then it went from there. And I never really wanted to sell guns. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to teach classes. So I was looking for a place to actually just teach classes only. And then I found that place, and then people were like, hey, well, we need guns. And so then we started selling.
Right. And so did you do this in your home in Georgia, or was this
This was here in Texas, in Austin.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Wow. Okay. And quick question then about your grandmother. So after this situation had happened to her, did she start learning about how to defend herself after?
Yes, so she learned self-defense, kind of taught, got her to shoot one time.
Sure.
But she was not a gun person at all, because guns are not for everyone.
Sure.
She's one of those people where she'd rather pray for you than anything. Mm-hmm. And so I said, well, Grandma, you leave that to me. I'll send them to Jesus and let Jesus take care of them.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. So, but, in the end, just that whole incident, I think kind of took a lot out of her, and she ended up getting cancer, and then later on down the, she passed away, and one of the last things I said to her, on her bed, I'll never let another lady experience what you experienced before, and so I'll make sure that the best is that's why I make sure I'm there for every single one of my classes. The classes are so important to me,
Yes.
and I just don't want any lady to experience what my grandmother experienced.
Well, I can tell you're passionate about it, even when I first met you in the class as well, too. So if you are in Austin, Texas, or you guys have them online, too, your courses online,
yes.
right? So you can take them online, too, from Michael. So definitely a wealth of knowledge. And I do encourage ladies and men alike, too, to just, as you mentioned, guns aren't for everyone. And I kind of say this about hunting, too. It's not for everyone, nor do you have to try it either. But I encourage you to try it or to start learning so that, one, you can be less fearful of them, two, maybe others can learn from it as well. And
what do you do if you find one? You don't know how to pick it up.
Right. Yeah, you just want to be, I don't know if comfortable is the right word, but you just want to be aware of how to use it. And yeah, in a situation where there is, I don't know, a bank robbery and then the gun gets knocked out of somebody's hand and then it lands right by you, how do you know how to give it to somebody, how to pick it up and just to give it safely to somebody who is aware of how to use that.
Exactly.
So I think it's important to know and to come to a decision, making intentional choice of whether you do want to engage further in that experience or not. But I think the more people that are aware, the more safe we'll be, right?
Absolutely.
What's your tagline there?
As always, more guns equals less crime.
That's right.
Go out there and buy yourself a gun.
Yes. So what is a bump stock?
A bump stock is a device that you attach to a rifle to be able to fire the rifle faster.
Okay. So you can see how this is probably a point of contention, yes? So why, and I get it. I guess when I first was unaware of laws and firearms, it's just like, why would you want that? Why?
Because it's fun.
Or trying to injure somebody or, all of these. And I'm sure people would automatically start to think, oh no, great, like rapid fire in a crowd setting and, festivals or things like that. This could be dangerous. So what's your...
So just like in a vehicle, why would I want a vehicle that goes 150 miles or 130 miles an hour when I know the fastest speed limit in Texas is 80 miles an hour on the tolled road, or 85. So why would I need a vehicle that goes over that, over 85 or 90? Well, because it's fun, and I want to experience it. So same thing for firearms, it's fun. It's fun to be able to shoot, fast, where you try to move your finger really fast to fire, all that stuff. It's just fun. It's being a person. A lot of people have different interests, whether it's high heel shoes, whether it's purses, whether it's clothes, whether it's, going to antique stores, whether it's food. A lot of people have different things that they like. And so for a lot of people, it just happens to be firearms. And it happens to be, hey, I want to be able to get a machine gun and fire. Well, a bump stock is a poor man's machine gun. It's a way that you can get this device, you can attach it to a rifle and be able to fire faster. And guess what? I have a new one that we're coming out with that no one's heard of.
Oh, Are we about to drop it now or it's a secret?
We're going to drop it now. It's called a rip grip, rip grip, let it rip. So the Cargill rip grip or the Cargill bump stock, we have our own version that we're coming out with, our own patent and everything.
Wow.
That's right. And so we're going to release this here in the next coming months.
Wow.
Out to the public. And
can a rip grip be a part of the flash and bang and flash? What is it called?
and it's easier to install. So with a bump stock, you have to do things to install it.
Sure.
It takes some time. With the rip grip of the Cargill bump stock, you just bam, slap it on, and boom, let it rip.
Wow. Okay. When can we expect that?
Oh man, it's coming out within months. Within like a month or two.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. When did you start this?
It's
journey?
in production. We've started this, a few years ago. It's in production,
So
ready to go.
time.
Oh yeah, we're ready to go. Now that I won the court case against the government, the United States government, the Cargill bump stock case, or Michael Cargill versus United States government, or Garland, or whatever you want to call it. Now that I won that case, which changed the entire gun control argument for the entire country. We're talking about a case where a guy used a bump stock allegedly, at a concert in Las Vegas and killed a bunch of people with it and injured others. One of the worst mass shootings in the history of this country. But the thing is, it was a madman that did this, and that was the only time that device has ever been used to commit a crime. And so the government decided they were going to ban this particular product in all 50 states. And I thought that was just insane because one person did something bad with something. Sure. Why ban it across the entire 50 states and turn innocent people into felons overnight? Sure. What if I'm sitting in my car driving along one night and for some reason I have a bump stock attached to one of my rifles in the trunk of my vehicle and I didn't hear that it was banned. I didn't know. I get pulled up by police. Somehow they end up in my trunk looking at my firearm and boom, I'm a felon. My rights are gone forever. I said, something has to be done about this. You can't just do that to people. So I decided to file a lawsuit against the government after I surrendered my bump stocks to the ATF. And then, we went to court. The case took, several years, went all to the United States Supreme Court, and I won. And that changed the gun control argument for the entire country. That means that the ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, they can't come after your triggers, say, hey, you can't own triggers or change your mind about it. Or, the brace where you attach that to a rifle. So, it's the parts and pieces that you add or whatever you do to your gun, they can't just automatically change their mind. One day it's legal. Now, 6 months later, a year later, it's now illegal. They don't have the right to do that. They're going to have to go through Congress, and Congress is going to have to change the law.
Mm-hmm. Why are these... It feels like small details, right, in firearms. And why do these matter in the overall message about just gun protection, Second Amendment rights? What is the bigger message here?
For me, it's just about one, we have a constitutional right, a Second Amendment. Everyone should be able to have access to firearms. And like we said, guns are not for everyone. There are some people that definitely shouldn't have guns. We know who those crazy people are. But, you should have a right, to a firearm. And you should be able to, have one at home, use it for hunting, whether it's your property, whatever, you should have access to it. Mm-hmm. And if you do something wrong, then we're going to hold you accountable for that.
Do you think part of these little details, though, of them banning the bump stock or making it illegal rather, would infringe on the or infringe. Yep. Would it infringe on the rights the Second Amendment rights as a whole too? Is it something that would start to affect that process and the overall message?
Absolutely. It's definitely an infringement. When you start nitpicking and taking parts and pieces, not even the firearm, and saying, hey, you can't even have this part or piece. When we're talking about regulating firearms, we're talking about regulating firearms, if you want to get down to what the Constitution says, not about parts and pieces. Then if you can regulate parts and pieces, then we can regulate high heel shoes and tell ladies, hey, you can't wear shoes. I'm OSHA, the federal government, and you cannot wear high heels over a certain height because they're bad for your back, and we're going to ban them. If your high heels go over a certain length, we're going to charge you with a crime.
Shoot.
Yeah. You don't have the right to do that.
No, that's right. You can do as high as you want. I don't have heels. I don't wear heels, and they are bad for your back. But we're not. That's your choice. That's your choice.
That's your choice. Exactly.
Right. That's what we like. Is we like
choice.
Choice.
Yes.
Freedom of choice. And would you agree or disagree that you have even more freedom of choice the more education you have behind firearms?
Yes, and you should choose to get more education because you know what? If you make a mistake, with that firearm, you're going to be held accountable and responsible for it.
So speaking of just, more education and getting, more out there about firearm safety and gun ownership and responsible gun ownership, right? ATF. Alcohol, tobacco, firearms. Let's talk about this. You are really you're passionate about getting into ATF and being,
yes.
Was it board of directors or what's the status?
So, I've sued the ATF in court, beat them in court. And so I definitely want to be a part of the organization where we can make some changes for the entire country. I think that we can fix some things, and work with Congress to try and change some things through Congress so that way we can make it better for us. I think we can make processes easier where we can, I should be able to, I get a background check when I go into the gun store to get any type of firearms, with a machine gun, semi-automatic, whatever, I get a background check. So we should, make it easy, equally, the same for all different types of firearms, whether it's a suppressor, whether it's a machine gun, whether it's a semi-automatic, it should be the exact same process, which it is as far as the background check now. So we should, be consistent with that. We're not being consistent with our laws with different types of firearms.
And I guess I imagine you'd probably encourage also just more education, right? Do you think like with more education there would be less opposition, against firearms?
And you'd be surprised when there are a lot of people that are getting introduced into firearms right now and do a lot of research on their own before they step into it. I had a young lady in class this past weekend where she did a research. She asked me questions that, I thought, man, it's like, why are you asking me that question? Because you know what? She'd really done her homework. She did a research and said, hey, I want to know about, for example, what should I get a handgun versus should I get a shotgun? She asked, certain key questions about home defense and stuff like that. And I really like that. I was like, man, you're doing your work. And that's what I'm seeing nowadays. I'm seeing customers come in who are really doing the research and trying to figure it out before they actually purchase. They're taking a class first and then doing some research and then coming in and buying the gun, then going out, shooting. And it's like they're doing it in the correct order. And God, I love that. And that's people you really want to help.
Yeah.
Because they're doing it the right way.
Yes.
And I'm seeing that a lot lately.
That's exciting too.
It is.
Yeah, to have that. And especially, again, as a woman. I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
I think my first, I don't know exactly when I first shot a firearm, to be honest with you. Can't even remember. But I've also, I am currently involved in hunting as well, too. So I shoot things from rifles, and I've done shotguns as well, fun like skeet shooting and things like that, and also pistols. So, however, yes, you can have the knowledge in the world too, right? Which is great. And I love it and I wish that I learned the right steps first, because I guess how I learned, maybe I started just, firing without knowing much about it. But once I started to understand, ballistics, or just even like how the machine is put together, you understand how to use it better. And I don't know exactly how to explain it. It's just because this image is in your mind of how, when you shoot, what happens, what clicks the bullet, and then how it shoots out and fires, right? Then it's like, then you understand, then I work myself backwards, where it's like, wow, I understand how to pull the trigger now. And so for me, maybe learning might be a little bit different, but I think that process is really helpful, because then for me, it pulled it all together, where it could help sort of create those baby steps in for, even a more responsible gun ownership. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is that even before your class, I was still fearful of the weapon. And it felt like I was detached from it almost. It felt that it wasn't a part of my body. And it was like, I'm trying to hold this thing out as far as I can and then shoot it, because I just want it like away from my body. But now I want it close,
right?
Because now it's one, And I mean, granted, sure, when you do go to shoot, there's a process to go. You do extend your arms a bit, but but it now feels as if it's one and a part of my body. And maybe today it doesn't, because I've been away from it for a few weeks, just been traveling and all these things. But so it also does show you the importance of doing it daily, and habits and consistent practice with it, not only from, a law standpoint, but also from an actual physical connection with the gun. So I feel more connected, I feel safer, and it's almost like I don't feel the need to even shoot it more too. It's just it's a wild experience. But I I definitely think that people should take those steps. So what that also means is just that I'm also on my own, learning journey too as well. And just the more and more that I do it, the less fearful that I become.
Right.
And I think that when you go to your class, you can be equipped, you can learn all the things, you can do your research, but then now, how do you piece it all together?
Right.
Which you guys do at
Yeah, and it takes someone, being patient with you and being calm, and help you and guiding you through the process. We're like gun therapists, and guiding through that process. To me, it's like fishing. When I was a little kid, my dad took me out fishing when I was about, I want to say like 7, 8 years old. He took me fishing, and he taught me how to, how to put the bait on the hook and how to cast out and everything. We're on this little lake. And so I, put the bait on the hook, cast it, sent it out and started reeling it back in. Started reeling it in. All of a sudden I caught something and I started pulling. And I reeled it in, I'm pulling, I'm reeling in, I'm pulling, I'm reeling in, pulling. And we looked and it was a dead body.
Yeah.
And so
I was not expecting that.
It took me forever to get over that. Of that fishing and and that experience, because they made me go to the funeral and see this body afterwards, which was totally different. It looked normal in the funeral home, but in the water, oh man, the fish eating out the eyeballs, and and I reeled this dead body in, and it was traumatic for me. So for me to be able to go back fishing again, I had to get over that hump to be able to do something like that. And it's the same thing, for some people, something traumatic may have happened to them, and they need someone to help them, to guide them through that process, and that's what we're there for.
Sure.
To guide you through that process to get you over that hump.
Yeah, and that unfortunately sometimes is what happens with a lot of people, is something massive has to happen to them in order to take those steps to just start to protect yourself. So what would you say to somebody who hasn't been in a situation that has been, like your grandmother or something, where a situation were to happen? Like what would you say to somebody why it's important just to start learning how to protect yourself, whether it be via firearms or...
And I'd rather people come to me before something happens. I don't want something to happen to you and then, you're forced down this road. I'd rather you walk in the door now. Come to me now. It's better to be prepared. That's why we have fire extinguishers, because we don't want to have a fire. That's why we wear a seatbelt, because we don't want to injure ourselves, in a vehicle accident.
Sure.
So come to me now. Let's grab these tools. Let's learn how to use these tools now, so that way we don't become a victim.
Right. And speaking of tools too, the tool of learning is very easy. You don't even have to own a firearm, right?
No, you don't have to own a gun. Just walk in the door.
I've also saw some tools recently too, actually, that I really enjoyed. So maybe you can give us a couple of little tools from your perspective. But it's called the Mantis, which is like a laser on the front of your pistol. Have you heard?
Yeah.
Why are you laughing at the Mantis?
No.
And it puts...
It's just the name, just because the mantis is like a fish to me. Isn't it like a fish or something?
Or a praying mantis. It's an insect kingdom, maybe. So you put it on. I hope I'm saying that right now. Maybe I feel like
No, you're right. You're right.
It's okay. So it's a laser, and there's a couple of other different tools that you can use too. That you put it on the end of your pistol,
right? And
it's a laser, so you don't even have to have any bullets in the chamber or anything. And you have a target at the end, and I'm not sure if I think it's on your phone on the target, right? And so then you can start becoming a better marksman via...
And those are so great to have,
Yeah.
It helps people with their trigger control, because a lot of people are slapping the trigger, yanking on the trigger, pushing on the gun, pulling on the gun.
Right.
And this helps you hold it steady and just squeeze that trigger. It helps you with the trigger reset and all that stuff. So.
Yeah, and continuously doing the reps and will also help. And a lot of people were like, dry fire, that's not going to help anything. You need to go to the range with real bullets. I hear, yeah.
Yes, it does.
I have to I have to do because I haven't done it yet. I just got it, so I'm very curious to see how my marksmanship is before.
Some people
and after.
don't realize what they're doing wrong unless they're dry firing or practicing like that. They don't see what they're doing wrong.
I see. Yeah.
So when I'm at the range and someone's shooting and I notice they're shooting too low, I'll take the magazine out the gun, have them grab the gun, hold the gun, and I'll say, okay, look at your sights. Put that front sight on the X. Now put your finger on the trigger. Now just pull the trigger just a little bit. Okay, pull a little bit more. Look at your sight. Pull a little bit more. Look at your sight. Pull a little bit more. Look at your sight. Gun goes click. I say, look, the gun didn't move. That's what I need you to do. I need you to pull slowly on the trigger while I'm looking at that sight and keeping that sight picture.
Yeah.
And just pull on the trigger. Don't yank. Don't jerk the trigger.
Right.
Just squeeze it.
Because that could be the difference.
Big difference. Makes a big difference.
Just a tiny,
Big difference for you standing, within 3 yards of a target and shooting the groin area versus shooting it at the X.
Right, exactly. So these tools can be very helpful. And again, like if you are nervous about owning a firearm or even, just bullets, just try the laser. Maybe that'll be helpful. And then you can start, just practicing via marksmanship. And, when you do eventually decide that you want to put bullets and put a mag in a pistol, then great, then you're set up for it. You're set up for success. So that's one tool that I'm excited to use. And then another tool that I've started to, just because I have been traveling, I've been road tripping as well too. And so I intend to take my firearms with me. And you want to know the state laws too. I think that was one of the questions that I originally asked you too in class, and I'm just like, what about in New York?
Yeah.
Well, not really New York.
Yeah, don't go to New York,
Florida,
New Jersey.
Tennessee, the good old states.
Don't go to California.
Don't go that way. So there is this tool, and actually I don't have it on me right now, but it's an app that actually really updates just instantly about gun laws in all states and how LTC Texas is recognized in different states too, and how it's compatible. So maybe picking your brain a second, what other tools do you recommend people use when as a responsible gun owner?
Yeah, definitely get the legal plan, because you can check with the attorney with that legal plan and say, hey, I'm going to take this trip and I want to take this particular gun with me to these particular states here. I want to make sure it's legal in those states. Here's the magazine I'm taking, it's an 18-round magazine. Can I take it to all of these states? And then how do I carry it if I'm going to go into one of those states that, that I can't carry with my license in that state.
Yeah.
So it's important, to get that as well.
And my first road trip, actually, I did call them too. I called Bear to Protect, and then they called me back and they said, okay, where are you going? What is your route? And then maybe offered some suggestions of, instead of going through, this state, maybe Arkansas you want to go through. And, as I was headed to Tennessee. So it was really cool. And then they give you those details, which again, otherwise just because you're in Texas, you could buy a gun and you can open carry.
Right.
Great. But then all of a sudden when you do travel, what does it mean to have the gun on your front seat as opposed to in your trunk? Right. Loaded, unloaded, like all of these nuances and questions like you are more than willing to answer in some of your classes and also go through.
Right. Because for example, the Texas legislature right now, they're thinking about allowing license holders to carry in all the prohibited places. They're looking at getting rid of the prohibited places. Say, hey, you want to carry in the school, you have your LTC, you'll be able to carry in all the prohibited places.
Oh, wow.
But that's in Texas, and they're looking at changing that, and that actually has passed out of one of the committees, and it's going to the full House, and it's going to go over to the Senate, and we'll see what happens when it gets there. This bill could change the makeup of it a little. They could add some restrictions in there. But we're looking at doing things like this, but that's just Texas. That's not other states.
Sure.
When you cross over into a different state, the laws are different in those other states. And so it's important that you know what those laws are. What about use of force and deadly force? When can I thread someone with a gun? When can I use the gun? That's going to be different. That can be different from state to state. Not every state has a stand your ground law. Not every state has a castle doctrine. So.
What are the laws around like teachers having firearms?
So in Texas, if you want to be a teacher and carry a gun in a school, that's like an elementary school, middle school, high school, you have to be either a school marshal, school safety officer, and be certified to actually do that.
So with this new law, maybe, would it give teachers the right to hold?
It could possibly give anyone the right to carry in all the appropriate places, including teachers, depending on how the bill it winds up in the end. So right now it's in the early stages. Not sure what the end is going to be, but that's a possibility. We're talking courthouses, allowing license holders to be able to carry inside of a courthouse. So we'll see, how it ends up.
Well, would love to just continue learning more from you. It's just, again, a wealth of knowledge and just, we can follow you on your YouTube channels and Instagram and all that. And I'll put it down below where you can talk with Michael or even just follow him and just start being aware of all these, laws and then gun safety and educational pieces. He's got it all. So let's talk a little bit about the advocacy work that you do as well, real quick, so that you can understand where your information is coming from. Yeah,
so along the lines of, what happened with my family, it comes activism. You want to make sure that I wanted to make sure that I went to the Capitol and got some of the laws changed. I wanted to make sure that I got campus carry passed in Texas. I wanted license holders to be able to carry in a college campus. So that way, that would help people like my grandmother. So we got campus carry passed here in Texas. I then, went after corrupt officials. I actually exposed a senior member of the police department here in Austin, Texas. We exposed this person as, doing things illegal that they should not have been doing, where it's, dealing with drugs, dealing with, strippers, dancers, whatever, and also dealing with, abusing people, in sexual acts and things of that nature, and being supposedly a pillar of our community. And so, and the bad thing about that was definitely the drugs. And so we exposed that, and and I've actually sued the city of Austin to allow gunners to carry inside their buildings. We've done that. So a lot of activism, plus, with suing the United States government. So I've done a lot of activism along with the podcasts, and it takes a lot, and that all boils down to me wanting to, do the right thing and live up to making sure, a person like my grandmother, would be able to live in this world and to be able to defend themselves.
I appreciate the passion behind it. So how can one help you get into ATF?
Unfortunately, people can't help do that. That's going to be up to the current administration, the Trump administration, to, pick me to work in the ATF or, whatever agency they decide to, to try to fill those positions. I would love to get there because there's so much that can be done. We can do so much on the Second Amendment side and make sure that it becomes permanent so that it can't be undone when the next president steps into office.
Sure.
And I think that's the most important thing.
Sure, yeah, as we've seen kind of in the past. So
that is correct.
If you're a freedom lover, you're going to want to follow Michael.
Because there's a lot, there's so many things that we're working on right now, so we'll see what happens down the road.
Great. Well, thanks so much. I really appreciate you just kind of, sharing your stories, even your vulnerable stories. And it's really important for people to hear, and it's really important probably for yourself to continue to tap into, too. It's always, you want to go back into why we do what we do, and that is what I'm here for, too, is just to show you behind the scenes of why you do what you do and why, and also educational pieces around gun and firearm ownership and, more so than anything, freedom, really.
Absolutely. And thank you for having me.
Yeah.
And as always, more guns equals less crime. Go ahead and buy yourself a gun.
Go ahead and also find Michael down below. We'll put links and all these things here. I don't know if this is going to be on your channel or my channel, who knows, but
we'll do it all.
All the information down there. My name too, Animal Based Bay.
That's right.
Yeah.
Animal Bay Based.
Animal Based.
I said
Animal Based Bay.
Animal Based Bay.
Don't listen to him.
That's right. Animal Based Bay, baby.
Thanks for watching. See you guys.